post-mortem.
Yeah, this is the 8-9 combo. This is the test match post-mortem, and that was Caleb Clark's second try, the one that ultimately sealed Bledisloe 2 in Wellington. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and mate, as our podcast listeners have just heard there, that really was the moment that the All Blacks put another curious Bledisloe contest to bed.
Paradoxical. Nothing made sense. Yeah. Although TJ Perenara, if that's peak Perenara. I mean, he did everything. It was like a follies. It was at one point he runs into the referee on a quick tap and tries to use that as the excuse why he knocked on.
Yes.
It was all happening.
Tried to blame him for taking the tap off the mark, which he knocked on. Yes.
The first half was one of the most intriguing and exhilarating 40 minutes I've seen in a long time. And yet none of that even made sense. I thought it was a battle of efficacy where one side was confusing motion with action and the other one was actually taking action. And in the end, that's why there was this 20-point gap, because they all kind of did the same stuff. It all looked about the same. It had the same kind of fire and smoke and glory. And then one side was getting over the line and the other one was just beating themselves up on the line.
Yeah. We'll get onto the stats in a second because they make for interesting reading. We are back, of course, with our immediate thoughts about what we've just seen in the second and final Bledisloe Cup test for 2024. And we've been really pleased to be brought to you through the Rugby Championship by Chasing the Sun 2, the wonderful 5-part all-access documentary series bringing together the Springboks' journey to their memorable 2023 Rugby World Cup, and which is now available to watch on RugbyPass TV worldwide. Just head to rugbypass.tv and sign up for free. Let's get into it, mate. And I mentioned the stats. It's a curious looking stat sheet, I've got to say. The big differences, the big standout differences probably tells you the tape of the game, but because number of carries is even, number of defenders beaten is even, number of passes is even, offload is even, turnovers conceded is even, tackles made and missed is even pretty even. But you look through it and you see that New Zealand made 600 metres to Australia's 300. They made 9 clean breaks to 4. They won 9 turnovers to 5. Kicks in play is even. The Wallabies actually kicked for 100 metres more from hand, but otherwise, set piece was pretty even. Number of rucks won and lost is pretty even. It's all really, really curiously even on the stat sheet. Wallabies and All Blacks in the second half had 63% of possession, and ultimately that's where the big difference comes. In a 5 tries to 1 scoreline that was 19-13 at halftime, 33-13 New Zealand win in the end.
Is it weird for me to think that game was more there for the winning than the one where you guys fell short by 3?
Yep.
And I thought,
feels like
I was trying to think why of that. I thought the shape was correct in the first half. The gain line was not intimidating. Wallabies maybe even shaded that contest physicality-wise. The breakdown was kind of going the loose trio of the Wallabies' way because Valentini, McWright, Wilson looks like a proper, well-oiled machine loose trio, whereas Kane Ardy was still a little bit out of whack. Satiti, whilst he is a wonderful runner, doesn't really play some of the other parts of the loose trio. So it just felt like, wait, this could work. And then there was this issue, which is there's no sweeper in the Wallaby defense. So a line break, a mini line break, a stumble break, a roll out of a tackle turns into a try because there's just no one home. There's no one coming around. There's no one folding. There's no one stretching. There's no one sweeping. I saw Jake Gordon kind of in that position, but then he plays far too up, and I think he's coached to play there, so I'm not even bashing Jake. Yeah. Why? What's the shape of the off wing? What's the shape of the 9? Why is there no one when there's no one home when you go through?
It makes no sense to me, and it hasn't made sense to me for a couple of years now. They've used the same sort of defensive shape out wide, and I still cannot make sense of it because the open side wing seems to be defending a long way in, or just flat out isn't there. So I don't know where they're supposed to be, but what I do know is that when they're needed to be there, they're not. And bugger me, there's line breaks to be made.
They're not even
and
in
it's
the
been happening
picture.
for years. I don't understand it.
I froze it and I didn't even see them in the picture.
No, they're not there. They are just not there.
In the same mini breaks or breaks that the Wallabies had, there was always a sweep around. There was always people flying out of nowhere.
No.
There was a Sever Reese coming on the wrong wing. There was Caleb Clark coming all the way across. People were just flying to it. And so that's a system error. And the other thing is at 13-12, I guess it was 13-12, that was such a critical point. And I hate that old trope of like, ooh, it's right before halftime, so the All Blacks might score.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what happened. And in my mind, I thought, oh no, that would have been such a different game. That would have been a completely different match.
13-12 at halftime would have been completely different. You're
Go
right.
into the sheds, tighten up, talk about how to kick more. I think there were like 4 kicks from hand in the first half. I was like, come on, let's kick some more. Let's get some territory there.
There was only
the All Black side, though, I think they seemed to come out of oranges on fire, man.
Yeah.
The rest of the test was not the way the All Blacks have played this year. They did find a way to score.
And that leads me into the 5-word headline, because I've literally just thought of mine, and it is halftime rocket works.
The rocket. That's good. My headline is Weird Welly-Wonka. Wallabies Wayne.
Oh, that's good. I'm actually going to write that down. Weird Welly-Wonka.
It was one of the weirder tests, and we know that we're watching the game and we're talking about it, afterwards. Right? And I kept thinking, this is weird, and I thought, why is it weird? And I thought everything is happening, strange things are happening, but also there were points where it just didn't make any sense to me. There was chaos on the field sometimes.
Yeah.
And every time it was chaotic, I thought, oh no, that's not good for the Wallabies.
I want to go back to your point there a little earlier, and you're talking about the first half there was opportunities there, and based on how they finished in Sydney last week and this performance tonight, they've got to be more annoyed and more disappointed and harder on themselves after tonight, because after how they came out of Sydney and how they started in Wellington in this game, and the first half an hour was good. There was a definite game plan to attack that seam, that defensive seam between edge of the back row forwards and Rico Ioane's channel, basically, and they opened that up a few times. And the second, the All Blacks adjusted their defense. They absolutely made a shift there late in the first half, even. But everything you said there before was right. The Wallabies were on top at the back row at the breakdown contest. They were more than holding. They were winning scrum penalties. This one's got to be really, really tough review for them. So I've sort of touched on it there. They did make a shift defensively. What worked well for New Zealand in the end?
Well, for New Zealand, it was adaptation and adjustments. They went into the sheds and something happened in there. I think partly they decided to...
They got a half-ton rockets, what happened?
There was a blunter shape off the ruck. They actually came in the tighter channels, and they explored some of the weaknesses in that channel. They also, I think, made a concerted effort to keep the ball in front of them. So territory must have gone their way in the second half. I don't have the stats in front of me, but
I suspect it would have. Yeah.
And
that's 60% possession. They'd have to have had similar territory, I'd reckon.
Yeah. They turned the Wallabies around. There was a lot of having. They had to scramble back just for the kick defense. So they also solved some of the innovations. The Wallabies brought in 2 things in the first half quite a bit, which is the overthrow line out. By design, and it was 3 different derivations of it. They also were using a 2-2-2 pod system on the forwards in the run, and the All Blacks choked that off at source. So there were a couple moments where Tupou would take the ball in the first half, and then he would turn his back, and then he would choose who he would pivot to. It was operating almost like Brody Retallick used to do for the All Blacks.
Yes. Yeah.
And the All Blacks sort of recognized that, and I think they stuffed that from then on. I also thought that the All Blacks with their shifteroo on the 10 and all that, I think that worked. So what worked
Yeah.
is that Beauden Barrett looked like he was playing the actual role of a fly-off. When Damien came
He
on,
was
he
being
was
a game
playing
manager.
the role
Yeah.
of the microwave 23 guy. And that seemed to fit their personalities more on this night.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the old, Wellington Stadium with TJ Perenara. Beauden Barrett just looked comfortable playing, first
Yeah.
five
Yeah,
eight.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, there was a lot more width on the Wallabies attack in that first half an hour. They were playing a lot wider off first receiver. Lolosio was there was a lot of running off him. They were even going to a second, a second carrier and running around the corner off him at times. And again, that was, that was to, or it was even a Tupou, or it was Bell, or it was Nick Frost as first receiver out the back to Lolosio, who then brought someone around the corner as well. That was when they were really trying to shift into that, part 13 channel of the New Zealand defence, and they were having success there. But you're right, the All Blacks got up quickly on the outside and shut that down awfully quick. So that was clearly what worked for them. And if what didn't work for Australia in the second half, it's that they couldn't quite come back from that. So in the face of the shifting defence, they didn't quite have a plan B, it looked like. And then as they started making the turnovers and getting held up over the line, things like that, the scoreboard starts coming into it. They start, making defensive errors themselves, and suddenly, they're down by 20 points in the end.
I also thought what worked for the All Blacks was ALB at 12. It looked like a different seeming attack than Jordie Barrett. Jordie Barrett's
a lot more direct.
Jordie Barrett's got his own strengths and styles, but I think ALB, I thought the quality of the actual hand-to-hand passing for the All Blacks was the best I've seen all year.
Yeah,
and like the ball was arriving on time in front of Will Jordan at speed to Caleb Clark, and that just makes a big difference when you have that quality of runner getting the ball at the right time and right in your midriff, right where you want it, instead of up here and there. And so even if TJ Perenara did not have the most accurate night, I thought it didn't really matter because he just got it to someone, and then Beauden Barrett and ALB really seemed to straighten the All Black attack.
Yeah. Jordan and Caleb Clark probably don't have too many tackle bust stats because they didn't have too many hands on them when they made those clean breaks. So they got through pretty quickly. Let's just hear a quick bit from Harry Wilson here. This is him talking to Joey Wheeler on the Sky Sport New Zealand coverage. It was interesting to hear him talking there, mate, about learning the lessons from that quickly, refreshing, and then getting ready to go on the Northern Tour. And this sort of picks up from what you were saying last week, that they'd want to play again. And I actually like that Harry Wilson's there. He's saying, we just need to keep going. So that to me says that they can feel the incremental improvements in their own game now, and they want to keep playing. They don't want to sit around and wait for 6 weeks for the next game. They want to play again now so they can continue on with this. So things are happening for the Wallabies, albeit slowly.
No, I think so. And the All Blacks were actually really good tonight. So they were not, they're 10.
Oh, yeah, they were very good.
Let's call them, they were operating at an 8 out of 10. And when the All Blacks, such a mighty, wonderful team, are operating at 8 out of 10, you're going to have a tough night.
Yeah.
What I predicted came true, which is the Wallabies were the ones coming out of the tunnel readier to play on this night, because they did actually shade that contest for 35 minutes of physicality. Even though the scoreboard was kind of there, you looked like the Wallabies were the more fired up team. What's curious about this, and I guess this is something to go back to the drawing board, and Joe probably is, even right now thinking about this, is, and so when the All Blacks did sort of have that second half that was better, what was the forwards make sense on the Wallaby bomb squad, but the backline substitutions, making it a fluke, is that really what you needed then?
No, and I said as much late in the week. I think Josh Fluke's a really, really good player, but I just didn't see bench impact when I saw his name in the 23. And you've got we talked about this in Games of the Week. This should have been the night they threw Corey Toole in, and it might have been a tough night for him. But when you've got someone with speed like that, you can.
No, I think that's not irrational at all, because speed was what was missing. You know, our friend John Ferguson.
Speed is what opened speed's what opened the Wallabies defence up. That's what worked for the All Blacks.
And so our friend John Ferguson, the Shepherd boy, has said this and wrote about it. And that's true, because there were moments where the Wallabies did, even in the second half, have breaks, and they couldn't even come close to finishing them, because there was no one able to glide away from the defense except for Tom Wright. And so Tom Wright, then the only one who had that sort of like leg, then was trying to do too much, because he knew that there was no one else to give it to who could fly by him. And I think there's just no way on selection that you can go into a test where speed is going to kill you without thinking about speed, when Australia has some really quick fellas, like you said, Corey Toole.
That
just did my head in. Yeah.
I feel like Wright will get some criticism for that pass that he threw on a line break that ultimately went to no one. But I tell you what, I think he's entitled to throw it and expect that Kellaway is going to be there, even if he can just get a toe on it. Like it was
a lot of wings would have had that. So maybe he was thinking
that's my point.
With a different wing. He could have put the ball on the toe and just kept it going too. And so,
but he was 2 steps behind it. He wasn't even there to be able to do that. That's what
true. If you ever played on a team where you're demonstrably better than a lot of your teammates, there could be a frustration because you start to actually make mistakes. And it's like you're expecting people to do things, and then you kind of do too much. So Tom Wright has that kind of feel right now where he's like, "Come on, guys, keep up with me." And there's no one who can.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had to worry about being discriminately better than anyone on any team, any sport I've played. Who do you think has learnt what from these couple of Bledisloe tests? Answer that both ways for both teams.
Well, it looks like Razor Robertson has acknowledged, maybe tacitly, we'll say, that his pick for 8 games at number 10 wasn't the right one, that it wasn't getting there, that whatever he was looking for to develop around the Damien McKenzie era of playmaker wasn't happening. He might have, like a great scientist sometimes accidentally discovers things. He might have discovered that ALB at 12 is actually also not a bad thing, because you can shift and move guy like Geordie, Will Jordan, the Jordans and the Geordies can move around. It's sort of mix and match, right? But you need to have a solid core at 10-12 for All Black rugby to work. It just never worked really well when you don't have good 10-12. They put so much emphasis on that.
Quick question there then. Could you play Linnett Brown and Geordie Barrett as your 12-13?
You could. So Geordie Barrett grew up playing 13. That's literally the position he played, right? Rieko Ioane has never, in my opinion, stamped his approval, his authority, whatever, on that jersey either. And there were moments I thought where he was one of the worst players on the field tonight. Like I just thought, oh, it's going to Rieko, good. And he's become almost I don't know, tentative in some ways. Like the old Rieko was a little more brash. But he dropped the ball cold. He got tackled by Harry Wilson. He got caught by Tate.
By Harry Wilson.
Yeah, and I got caught by Tate. There were just moments where you go, is he really playing with wild and reckless abandon? I don't think so. So why not? Yeah, sure. Geordie plays wings, has played wings, so he has the pace. Yeah, could do. I think the other thing that the All Blacks learned was that they have to get their fundamentals right. It looked like their line out was a bit more functional. I thought their maul was really good, and they kind of went to it.
Their maul defense was excellent.
Yeah.
It was working. What do Australia learn from this game now?
The difference of how little tiny margin moments, the same cliches you always say, how they can get away from you, how a game where you theoretically could look at this game, the second Bledisloe, and say this was a better performance for much of it, and we actually were more in ascendancy at times, and yet we get beaten by 20. Like, how does that happen? And I think young players aside and go, hi, Jeremy Williams, let's just talk about how this happens, how you've got to, when you have ascendancy, you've got to come away with points, and you have to also stamp your authority. You can never let them back in. And I thought there was too many let them back in moments, and then at some point they were running wild.
And this is why I say that they've got to review this one fairly harshly, because they will probably rightly consider that this was a better performance, but it's got a worse result. So
yeah, for sure.
They need to look at why that was and why they managed a better result with a not great performance last week. And that's not to undersell that they did play very well in that second half to get themselves back in the contest as well as they did, but to then shell it as much as they did a week later, I mean, that's the age-old Australian rugby problem too.
Let's look at the 8-9s combos then. What do you think about Tate's cameo? I thought Jake did pretty well, and then I thought Tate, there was a drop-off maybe.
Yep, there was.
Do you think what's the long-term solution there? I mean, there's three scrum offs that all have some flaws. you have to stick with a couple of them at some point for them to become a Connor Murray or whatever.
I don't know what it is, and the concern is that there's probably another 12 months of this, because even though he had explored an opportunity to go to France this year, Jake Gordon is now firmly in the frame to play the Lions test next year. He's clearly at the top of Joe Schmidt's list for selection. So Jake Gordon's going to be around next year. I'd be surprised if Nick White's not. But then the following year, they might potentially both go.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we could have another 12 months of this yet. So I don't know what the solution is right now, because as I've said numerous times, Gordon wasn't in my top 3 or 4 at the start of the year. So I feel like that's all been thrown on its head here now. So, yeah, it was a weird test. You are right.
It was.
When you said that to start with, I thought, well, no, it was. It was actually a weird test. Maybe even weirder than last week.
Yeah. I thought Joe also, I mean, this is what I would think. Maybe Joe doesn't. But the locks, I still think he can get a lot out of some overseas picks there. But on the maul defense, on rolling a maul, I think on the banker ball and lineouts, on a certainty of lineout catching, the depth of it, I just felt like in the end that was where All Blacks are not that good either, so they could have been there for the taking.
Yeah.
As I thought the loose trios on whole, I thought the Wallabies won that. I thought McRae, Wilson, Valentini, Gleeson. I thought they played the better match.
I'd still, and look, Gleeson was good again, but I think I still want Valentini on the field at the back end. Like he's the best ball carrier on the park at times. He was really so good tonight, and it seems like they're taking him off on the hour because that's what their sheet of paper says. And I don't know.
The other drama that I'm not really here for and I'm kind of tired of is the whole like Tupou being hurt but not hurt but about to be hurt but then he's hurt. I'm like, I would like to have a test match where I watch the Wallabies and Daniela Tupou just comes on, does his job, and then he leaves. The guy comes on. It always seems to be early days where you're going, what's wrong with the knee? What's wrong with the ankle? What's wrong with the hip?
And look, he did well to go down after 70 seconds with what looked like a fairly serious knee injury. And
I thought he was done.
I thought he was completely done.
Yeah.
And then he not only played through till half time, but came back in the second half and kept going for another couple of minutes. And maybe that was a mistake, but I've got to give him credit for that. Do we need to talk about some fairly obvious missed things from the officials? Or do we just acknowledge that and move on?
No, I'm not going to do any ref talk.
But
I'll put this in the category of weirdness, which is it was also a weirdly officiated game, which can also really help you. I mean, like I thought once Fraser McWright realized that there doesn't have to be separation post tackle, he was like, "Oh, this is good. This is fun."
Yeah. Oh, okay, we're playing like this tonight. Yeah.
It was a pretty Wild West kind of moment there.
Look, I'm glad that they eventually saw the knock on in the lead up to Cody Taylor's try, but how they then looked at it so many times and how they then saw him very clearly playing the ball on the ground and then thought it was only a knock on,
not penalty. I
don't get that. Anyway, that's a wrap then, mate. on the final Bledisloe Cup edition of the Test Match post-mortem, another one done, another one fulfilled. These have been good. I've enjoyed these.
Weird night.
It was a weird night. Tell us what you think at the 8-9 Combo on all the socials, or leave your thoughts in the comments section right here on the 8-9 Combo YouTube channel. Hit Harry and I up on the socials in the usual place as you all do. And of course, if you like, follow, subscribe on your pod platform of choice on YouTube. If right now, you'll definitely get every new episode as soon as it drops. And don't forget as well to head to RugbyPass.tv, where you can watch both series of Chasing the Sun, the fantastic series celebrating South Africa's back-to-back Rugby World Cup wins in Japan and France. And Chasing the Sun 2 is a fantastic series. We're really glad that everyone can now go and watch that as well. So make sure you sign up for free at RugbyPass.tv and watch that wherever you are in the rugby world. This is the Test Match post-mortem from the 8-9 Combo, the short side set-piece combination you didn't realise you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears with Planet Rugby's Jared Wright this week.
Beat the Pumas, smash them, get it done. Come play with us.
South Africa, Argentina in Umbumbela still to come. We'll see how it all plays out.